Now, of course, it's not just with the virus that people see exactly what they want, exactly what suits their argument. I think it's even worse. I mean, much worse with global warming. I mean, I'll give you a crazy example of that from Lisa Wilkinson, one of the hosts of the project on the very woke Channel 10. They were interviewing Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce, who was talking from the town of Walcha, New South Wales. And Wilkinson, I mean, a real global warming warrior, was horrified by what she saw or thought she saw and tweeted this picture from the interview. Look behind Barnaby Joyce there. She said, is there no small irony watching Barnaby Joyce refuse to engage on net zero, which is tougher cuts in our emissions, while standing in a piece of Australian bush so tinder dry that it looks like it would go up in seconds should one hot day. I mean, even look at it. And true, there did seem to be one dead tree there on the left of that picture, but the rest of those trees, let's see if we can get that picture back up. But the rest of the trees seem to me, and I might be wrong, deciduous trees that in winter do naturally lose their leaves. Quite normal, nothing to do with global warming. They'll be back in spring. And as for that particular town, Walcha, tinder dry? They probably wish. It's been so soaked in the storms and floods that have hit New South Wales that town's been one of the many that have been given disaster relief. So you see what I mean? You show a warmer slope Wilkinson, a boggy town, they still see a bone-dry victim of global warming. So how can you win? But I'll tell you, with facts stated repeatedly and relentlessly, great facts, happy facts have just come out from Bjorn Lomborg. I'll talk to him in a second. Now, again and again, we've been told that the planet is heating dangerously and that people are dying from it. Dying right now from hunger caused by global warming or from heat waves caused by global warming or from cyclones or from any number of climate disasters that apparently are wreaking havoc on our health, claims our ABC. In fact, wiping us out, says global warming prophet Greta Thunberg.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing.
Now, this is so firmly believed that it's actually making some children cry in fear.
If they're not going to change anything, then what's going to happen to humankind? What's going to happen to what's going to happen to the whole world if no one does anything?
But is any of that true, or is it as false as my pronunciation of Walker just before? Joining me is someone who does not doubt the planet is warming, but does doubt a lot of the scares and a lot of the so-called fixes. Bjorn Lomborg is the author of the bestsellers False Alarm and The Skeptical Environmentalist. He's also president of the Copenhagen Consensus think tank. And he joins me from Malmö, Sweden. Bjorn, always great to talk to you. Tack så mycket. You have just updated your famous graphic. Thank you, mate. I rehearsed that particularly for you. Hey, Bjorn, you've just updated your famous graphic where you count the deaths of people from climate disasters over the century. Let me now show that graphic on the screen of climate deaths over that period. Can you please tell us what these figures tell us?
Yes. So, Andrew, this really tells us how many people die from climate-related disasters across the world over the last 100 years. And again, this is not my data. This is from the International Disaster Database, what is commonly recognized as the best global source of understanding of all the deaths that have happened across very, very many different things, not just climate. They also look at epidemics and many other things. But I'm just showing you the number of people that have died from climate-related disasters. And what you see back 100 years ago in the 1920s, on average, about 500,000 people died each year. That's a terrible count. That's a very, very large count. But what has happened since then is, I think, contrary to what most people believe, and certainly contrary to what the girl that you just showed before knows, it has not increased. It has dramatically decreased. So what we're seeing today is that in the 2010s, the average number of people dying from climate-related disasters was not 500,000. it was about 18,000. Remember, again, this is from floods, droughts, storms, extreme temperatures, and wildfires. So all the things that we care about. And curiously, if you then take 2021, this year, of course, it's not done, but if you take the first 7 months and look at what do we know have actually killed people. So there was a heat dome, 624 people. There was a snowstorm in Houston area in February. There's been a number of storms and floods in India. There was a big flood in Germany and Belgium causing more than 300 dead. If you add up all of that, it's a little less than 3,000. If we extrapolate that out to the end of the year, it'll probably be around 6,000. Remember, we've never seen fewer deaths. This is a dramatic decline from 500,000 to 18,000 and now down to 6,000. It's a very different story than what you hear.
And in fact, Bjorn, the news is even better when you add the fact that the population of the world has in the last 100 years actually got nearly 4 times bigger over that period. You've adjusted for that in another graphic of your actual risk of dying from climate disasters, worked out deaths per million people. So that makes it the risk of dying from it even less than your first graphic suggested. Now, can you tell us
So
what has caused this? Why are we so much safer than we were 100 years ago?
So it's important to say this doesn't mean global warming is not a real problem. It is. But it tells us that our ability to handle problems that global warming and many, many other things throw in our way has dramatically increased. Fundamentally, it's because we're technologically much more advanced. We have much more warning, for instance, of catastrophes happening. We're much richer, which means we are much better, much more secure. For instance, if a hurricane hits rich Florida, it'll make a lot of destruction, but it won't kill very many people. But if a similar size hurricane hits Guatemala, which is really poor, it'll devastate the economy. It'll kill tens of thousands of people. So getting out of corrugated roofs and into permanent buildings will help you a lot. You can afford better protection. You can afford to be safer. So the reality here is to say, yes, global warming is real. Yes, global warming is a problem, but it's not this end of the world that we're being told. Actually, we're becoming better and better able to handle the problems from global warming, and we've never seen less death than we're seeing this year. That's very contrary to what you're hearing every time.
Yeah, but this goes to a point that you've explored quite a bit, I believe, Bjorn, where with these global warming policies, if they really clobber an economy and make it poorer than it would otherwise have been, particularly in a third world country or developing nation, and it makes it less rich, then it probably would make it less able to afford those things that would actually protect people from climate-related disasters. Is that correct?
Exactly. And there's a lot of different ways that's true. People worry about malaria becoming more endemic. But remember, malaria is a disease of poverty. If you get sufficiently rich, you both have a healthcare system that tackles it, and you can afford the medicine personally, which means you effectively eradicate malaria. That's why getting rich means you get rid of malaria, not that you have so much heat that the mosquitoes will flood in and then give you more and more malaria. And that's true in all different kinds of areas. You need to recognize that, yes, climate has a real cost, but climate policy likewise has a real cost. There's a wonderful example in the US, for instance, on heat and cold deaths. We know that many, many more people die from cold. And one of the things that are important to avoid dying from cold death is that you can afford heating your home in the winter. Now, the fracking revolution in the US meant that people could better afford to buy gas because it became cheaper and heat their homes better. It's only a small fraction of the US households that are heated with gas, but that little fraction actually became so much warmer in the winter that it saved 11,000 people from dying every year. We don't hear about that because obviously it's just anonymous people dying without any CNN TV cameras telling us. But if you then make climate policies that drive up the cost of heating again, you will see many of those deaths return. And of course, if you drive it up sufficiently high, you'll see even more. We can't just talk about the climate cost. We also have to talk about the climate policy cost and weigh those two.
Absolutely correct, Bjorn. We've already had some surveys in New South Wales of showing that some people were too scared to put on their heaters in winter, and they're the poorer and the older in particular, and that is just asking for trouble. And here we are, you know, shutting down power stations and driving up power prices. I don't get it. Bjorn Lomborg, I urge readers or viewers to read your stuff on the internet. There's plenty of it there. I thank you so much indeed for appearing on the show again.
Great to be here.